Pat, just want to get back to what you're doing with Ohio Lawyers Give Back. Now, you've tried to set an example for your profession, and you've met with a lot of resistance.
Yes.
How can you get your profession on board to do the kinds of things that you're doing and not just look at a paycheck and a transaction, but to give back to society through their class action suits?
One lawyer at a time. I just have to convince a lawyer here and a lawyer there, and I'm not going to change the whole profession. But
Is it a matter of that lawyer or that law firm saying, we need to do what's right?
That's exactly what it is. And some of them have seen this and they've said, you know, and I'm talking about big corporate defense lawyers. You would never expect to back this up. And they've said, this helps. This is something that helps the boards that I sit on. This helps those kids that, one of the guys who has a kid in his family who has cerebral palsy. And he said, this is going to help my son, or this is going to help my grandson. And so I ought to go do it. And they saw the outcome and they said, wow, it's the right thing.
Has society been served better by having the kind of legal system we have versus more money, more talent, more things are put into teaching values, teaching ethics, teaching those things?
Well, you know, it's the cart before the horse. If you were to able to take the money all off of this, put this on hold, and then fix the problem, then you wouldn't need all the other stuff down the road. But in the meantime, down the road keeps moving down the track.
It's no different than the juvenile detention system.
Exactly.
You know, once a kid is in juvenile detention, the community will spend tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on that kid. If they spent one-tenth of that
up front, we wouldn't have them in the system.
Exactly.
So our whole thought process is, if you go to the police, which is supposed to protect us, they say,
right.
well, look, I have this possible danger. So has he done anything? So no. Right. So they want to wait.
Responsive, not preventive.
Right.
We need to be preventive.
So in each area of our society, that is a constant.
That's a key. That's a problem.
So how do we change that?
Nobody has the answer to that.
See, we have a reactive.
No, there is an answer.
There's an answer, but no one wants to do it.
That's the problem.
It costs time and money and difficulty.
We have a reactive society.
Yeah.
We have a reactive society, and nobody wants to say we can have a preventive society. We can have a just society.
Because that means everybody has to wake up tomorrow and follow all the rules.
No.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a very good
nobody
point.
Wants to follow
that does require following all the rules. And you know,
people don't want to do that.
Back in olden times, you know, back in the village, people would be shunned.
Absolutely.
For not following the rules.
Right, because the community was so much smaller, and everybody knew when you didn't follow the rules.
And then that community would fall in a line. You know, they would take care of one another, and they
much less
but fundamentally, guys, the problem is, if I'm a citizen, and I'm looking at the rule makers and rule implementers, and if they break the rule,
well, that's
the problem.
That's one problem, but that's a bad excuse. It's because he did it, I can do it.
No. But that's the example. If an attorney, if the law firm, or if the law enforcement agency, if the government, if they break the
rules, then why should I follow them?
Yeah, why should I follow them? So that itself has destroyed.
People don't think about breaking the rules or having a lawyer until they're already in the slammer, and then they say, uh-oh.
But the fact of the matter is, you know, I mean, we're not talking about the slammer. We're talking about, you know, in the case of class action lawsuits, for example, you know, a company breaks the rules. They violate their customers, for example.
Well, what you're saying is right, because in advance, you're right, they do sit down sometimes with their lawyers and they say, how can we get away with this? Exactly. And unfortunately, lawyers figure out a way to do it, and that's wrong.
The tobacco companies, for years, built into their business model the lawyers that were backing them up.
That's absolutely right. They built fraud into their business.
There are companies and individuals that build lawyers and lobbyists into passing legislation that can allow them to do certain things.
So how do we bring values back into our society? We know all these problems. But is there a way we can, or are we going to be permanently going to live in?
Yeah. I mean,
when does the alcoholic stop drinking? When they hit rock bottom? Maybe we haven't come to rock bottom.
Well, maybe we don't realize that we're the alcoholic.
Exactly, we are, but we have to come to rock bottom, and that's not here yet.
Well, we are at the rock bottom. How far do we want to go?
Apparently, we need to go further in order to have people start changing their behavior.
We have our society. 40+ million people are on antidepressant drugs.
Okay.
Or more than 50% of our relationships are falling apart. Our children do not have proper parenting at home. We are a sick society. So how far do we need to go? And we are constantly blaming each other. The legal system is blaming the public because they don't have the value system. The public is blaming our elected officials. And we are blaming. The blame game is going on.
Yes.
And the media has made as a business, blaming. But nobody is fixing this problem.
So do you fix the whole problem, or does the person fix themselves?
Well, the fundamental...
Do you think you contribute to society?
Well, all
You
of us.
personally?
Yes.
Okay, so apparently you're doing the right thing. Do you?
I think I do.
Okay, so if each person just looked inside themselves in their own hearts and changed their own attitudes and their own behavior day to day, then society would change.
I think that fundamentally, to change the society, we have to, I keep on saying about this, but fundamentally, if we bring the fundamental truth that you are not a separate entity, I'm not a separate entity, he's not a separate, we are all part of the same
We
one.
affect each other. Yes,
Affect
we do.
each
We do
other.
affect each other, absolutely.
Well, I thank you for what you're doing in setting an example for our community. And in a moment, we're going to be back with Brian Fortney, who's going to be our community commentator. Welcome back to Values in Action. We're here with Brian Fortney, our community commentator from Cleveland Magazine and Inside Business Magazine. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
It's an honor to be here, Rotten, Cheaton, Stewart. It's good.
And Brian, what is your take on what you heard from Pat's discussion with us?
I think it's hopeful. I had a very hopeful take. The idea that if more attorneys, more firms, more organizations picked up on some of the discussions that you all had, that there'd be less need for the attorneys and the firms. And that, by its definition, would mean there's less grievance. And that can only be good for the community.
Yeah, but Pat's reaction was that if community has more values, if community did not need legal attorneys, then there'll be less attorneys. So he has put the emphasis on the community. And community says, at least what I heard from people says, that our problem is because we have too many lawyers. And they has to bill somebody. They have to excite. In fact, if you have a problem with your marriage, you go to an attorney. They'll convince you to have a divorce.
Well, you have a vicious cycle. You've created. It's a system in and of itself. And if there's not a point where you can say enough, where the community says enough, that we're going to interact with each other responsibly and from a values-based decision-making process, then you can get out of the self-fulfilling prophecy of needing attorneys to solve problems that attorneys diagnose.
It seems to me that we're not empowering one another to take responsibility for our community. By empowering one another, we're saying, let's resolve our disputes. Let's put the right kind of values and ethics into our community. And then all of a sudden, some of our litigation goes away. But the way that it's institutionalized right now, and Pat Perotti would admit it, is that you have a problem, you go see a lawyer.
And
the lawyer fixes it, the lawyer generates litigation, somebody needs to engage another lawyer.
It all comes from our ego. When you have a difference, whether it's a corporate two CEOs who have the biggest egos, and once I say something and you say something, it's not many times who is right. Most of the time it becomes my ego.
Right, who wins?
Who wins?
But it all comes down to motivation, the core factor of humanity.
You know, an interesting statistic that I read a few years ago, there is a hospital in Michigan that has the lowest rate of malpractice lawsuits against it in the United States. Their philosophy is when a doctor commits a wrong, they go to the family and apologize.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, it all goes back to, again, we keep talking about these situations. It's all motivation. We have to convince society not to look at an error, an accident, a genuine accident, as akin to winning the lottery. We have motivated people wrongly, and that goes back to the way that we emphasize within our society and demonstrate the various situations. We demonstrate people winning. We demonstrate people losing. And we don't motivate people to accept genuine responsibility from one another, and we don't impart the values to go with the fact that not everybody is right all of the time, and just because that you have been wronged doesn't mean that you're entitled to millions upon millions of dollars. People have to take responsibility for their actions, and also on the other end, accept others taking responsibility.
I think also we want people to understand the ripple effect of their actions, that if they respond, if they make a mistake and they don't right a wrong, it creates a ripple effect because
everyone suffers.
Yeah, because for every action there is going to be a reaction. We can assure that. It's the law of physics.
Thank you, Brian, for being on our show.
It's an honor to be here.
Thanks again, Brian. All of you watching, continue the dialogue on Twitter and Facebook at Values Action.
Please join us next week for another episode of Values in Action.